Hey everyone, Tony Rod from Jim Rockstone reading through the book of John, just from a Bible study that I'm working on, aside from Samuel, which we will finish soon, this week, maybe next year, but this week will be next year. At any rate, I don't want to be funny, but John 6 is interesting, and I just want to share this with you because I think it's interesting to see kind of faith in action or faith in growth. Anyway, so it says here, it was nearly time for the feast of Passover kept annually by the Jews. When Jesus looked out and saw a large crowd had arrived, he asked Peter, "Where can we buy bread to feed these people?" He said this to stretch Philip's faith. He already knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, "Well, 200 silver pieces wouldn't be enough to buy bread for each person to get a piece." One of his disciples, it was Andrew, brother to Simon Peter, said, "There's a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but that's a drop in the bucket for a crowd like this." And Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." There was a nice carpet of green grass in this place. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread and, having given thanks, gave it to those who were seated. He did the same with the fish. All ate as much as they wanted. When the people had eaten their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the leftovers so nothing is wasted." They went to work and filled 12 large baskets with leftovers from the 5 barley loaves. The people realized that God was at work among them in what Jesus had done. They said, "This is the prophet for sure, God's prophet right here in Galilee." Okay, so let me just say that, it's just a standard staple that the 5,000 count was really more like 10,000 at least, because Passover was about to begin and people were traveling in families. So these 5,000 were just the men, right? And so traveling were the women, the wives, the children, etc. So there was maybe more like 10,000 people in the crowd. And so Jesus is always trying to feel how his disciples are learning, how much have they learned, how has their faith increased in him, who do they think he is, etc. Right? So, when he poked Philip by saying, "Hey, there's a large crowd here. What do we have for them? How can we feed them?" And Philip is like, "Well, we only have this bit of money here, but even if we had 200 silver pieces, it wouldn't be enough, to fill and to satisfy the crowd." And then, out of left field, comes Andrew, another disciple, Simon's brother, and he said, "Well, there's a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish." And I'm thinking, all right, so why did this guy even mention that? I mean, Jesus and the disciples are looking at a crowd of 10,000 people gathering there to listen to teaching, to Yeshua, gathered there for healing, etc. And so they've been there for a few hours and they're hungry. And Jesus sees that. And he looks around and he asks his disciples, what can we do for them? And they're thinking, well, we don't have enough money. And even if we had this amount of money, we couldn't even feed everyone to their satisfaction. And so where in this why did Andrew say, "Hey, there's this little kid here with his lunch, some bread and some fish"? Like, was that a joke? Was he being sarcastic? Or was he beginning to believe that Yeshua was who he had been demonstrating all this time to be, the Son of the living God, Emmanuel, God among them? Because how could a little kid's lunch of 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish even begin. I mean, how could that be? How could that feed all these people if it wasn't for finally this disciple named Andrew beginning to believe, or maybe believed already, that he could do it, that Yeshua could build this miracle, that he could build it right before their eyes and right before this crowd. And I think that it is unspoken, but I believe that Andrew did demonstrate faith, and I think Yeshua caught it. I think Andrew threw it right at him, like, here, Messiah, here, Yeshua, here, Messiah, bam, and he threw that little kid's lunch, and Jesus grabbed it, and it was touchdown. And Jesus said, that's all I needed to see. I needed someone to say, here's this little bit. Do what you need to do for this big miracle that we need. Wow. I really believe that. And so Jesus went to work. Yeshua went to work. He raised up that lunch to the Father. He prayed, and it was multiplied. And the word says that everyone ate to their fill, to their satisfaction. And the word goes on to say that after everyone had their fill, they filled up 12 baskets with leftover bread. And the people did realize that too. This is the prophet for sure, God's prophet right here in Galilee. Jesus knew they wanted to make him king, the word says. And so he slipped away. He went up to the mountain to be by himself. That wasn't the point. He didn't come to be king just yet. But he did come to increase, he came to plant faith in us and trust in us for him. And Andrew surely demonstrated that he believed that all of those miracles and all of that teaching, it changed him. He was a believer in the man that he was following. And he planted that little seed. And Jesus went to work with it. Yeshua went to work with it. Pretty awesome. All right, everyone. Jem Stone. Talk to you soon.